All right, so here is our Module 3 review, right? So it's about Ms. Rawolf and her desk. Now the feet from the desk, this is our y-axis. The time in minutes, this is our x-axis, okay? So first we need to find the domain, and domain is found by going from left to right using the x-axis. And remember, this is a video, so you can pause. So when I look at this graph here, the leftist part is right here with a closed dot, and that's at time 0. The right has a closed dot, and using that x-axis, its number is 15. So I go from 0 to 15 using closed brackets because they are closed dots. Okay? All right, I'm going to erase those purple marks. Now I'm going to use green to talk about range. So range is the bottom to the top, but we use the y-axis. So here's the bottom of my graph, and that y-axis number is 2. Here's the top of my graph, and that y-axis number is 9. So write it how I did it. I did bottom to top, so I go 2 to 9. And both of those points were part of the line. Part of the line is a closed bracket. If you use an open bracket, right, that is for when we have an open dot or we have an arrow. Okay, and these special brackets are all for domain, range, increase, decrease, and constant. So those specialized brackets are for these highlighted words here. Okay, so that's why you have to figure out if you need an open or a closed bracket. And my example here showed you the two options for a closed bracket, which is when it's a closed dot, that's what these were. And then the other side here, the range here, was the part of the line. All right, so increase is when our graph is going up from left to right. And again, we use the x-axis numbers. The only time we use that y-axis number is for the range. So looking at my graph here, let me erase these green marks. And we'll do increase in blue. So looking at my graph, going from left to right. So starting from the left, this isn't going up, but this section is. So let me write that. This is increasing. Right? And then it starts increasing right here at time 2 and stops increasing here at time 5. So we go 2 to 5, and both of those were part of the line, so I use closed brackets. Then I look at my graph, and I'm not increasing here, but then I start increasing again. So here's my increase because it's going up. And it starts increasing at 7 and stops increasing at 10. So we go from 7 to 10. And both of those were part of the line on the graph, so I have closed brackets. Then this is not increasing, this is going down, but this next section is increasing. And it starts increasing here at 12 and stops increasing here at 13. So it goes from 12 to 13. Closed brackets. Okay, so we got all the increases done. So now we're going to look at the next one, which is decrease. So decrease is when we go down from left to right using that x-axis. So starting from the left, this isn't going down. We already know this part's increasing. This part is going down. So this part is going to be a decrease. Oops. And it starts decreasing right here, and that's at time 5, and it stops decreasing here at time 7, so 5 to 7. And those are part of the line, so it's a closed bracket. Continuing my journey, we already know this part's increasing. Oh, this part goes down when I go left to right, so that's going to be a decrease. Starts decreasing at 10, stops here at 12. So I go from 10 to 12. Now I have to look at the constant. So the constant is when the graph is flat. So looking at my graph here, we start at the left, and look, that first part is flat. So let me erase these other pinks. So we have flat, and it first starts being flat at time 0 and stops being flat at time 2. So it goes from 0 to 2, and these are both going to be closed. The next flat part is this last bit. Starts being flat at time 13, stops being flat at time 15. So we go from 13 to 15, part of the line and a closed dot. Now, the maximum is the top point. So you find that point, and remember, this is about a location, right? So you find that location and figure out that X number and that Y number. So let's look at our graph here. Okay, let me get rid of all of this. So the top part of my graph is right here. That's the toppest part of my graph, right? There's nothing more above that. That's part of this line that I drew here. So that X value, I go straight down, that X value is 5. And its Y value, straight across, is 9. So when I write this, X value is 5, Y value is 9. And it's always going to have the round brackets because this means a location, right? You are telling me, hey, if you want to find the maximum, it's at this point. Same with the minimum. The minimum is the bottom point, which is also a location. So you have to give its X and Y value, its location on the graph. So looking at our graph here, I'll do the minimum in blue. Well, the lowest point or the minimum point or the bottomest point of my graph is this one, right? There's nothing drawn lower than this blue point. That X value is 12, while that Y value is 2. So when we write it, it's 12, 2. And again, uses the round brackets. All right, so x-intercepts are when the graph is on the x-axis. Okay, so let me erase my lines here. So remember, this is your x-axis. So we're looking for when our graph passes through. Well, see, my graph actually never gets to touching the x-axis at all, right? This is the lowest it gets, and that's not the x-axis. So our actual answer for x-intercepts is there's none. Now, y-intercepts is when it happens on the y-axis, and the y-axis is this highlighted in blue. So where does our graph touch? Here highlighted in blue. Well, it touches right here at 5, right? That's where it starts. So my y-intercept is 5. Now in this next bit, we have f of 8 equals blank. Well, when you have a number inside, that means they gave you your x value. You need to figure out the y value that corresponds from the graph. So looking at our graph here, our x value they found us, so x value they found us was 8. Well, if I look at my graph straight up, that's right here, and its y number partner is 4. So that would be my answer, is 4. In 33 has f of x equals 6 when x equals blank. This is a nice hint because it's saying, hey, you need to figure out x. So this 6 is your y. So looking at my y-axis, I'm going to find 6, and I'm going to figure out the x's. Now you got to be careful because with y's, you can have a couple of x's. So if I go straight across, I touch right here, and that number is 3. But if I keep going, I touch again, and that number is 6. And if I keep going, I touch again right here, and that number is 10. And 6, man, touches a lot of times. And this last time it touches is about 12.7. So we have a couple of answers here, and I don't even remember them all. We have 3, 6, 10, and 12.7. So we have 3, 6, 10, and 12.7. So that had a couple of different answers. Okay. Now, this next bit is we need to start matching up what all of these mean with their corresponding feature, right? So look at this. Let's look at our graph again. Get rid of all of these hootenannies. All right, well, I want the y and the x. So, we're talking about feet from Miss Rawolf's desk and time in minutes, right? So if the higher my graph goes, the farther I'm getting from my desk. Okay, so like here I'm the same distance, I'm getting farther, I'm getting closer, I'm getting farther, I'm getting closer, I'm getting farther, and then I stay the same distance. Okay? So the farthest Miss Rawolf gets from the desk, the farthest happened here, and that was at my maximum, so that's what I'm going to put A is 28. The closest Miss Rawolf gets to her desk, well, that happens here, and that was the minimum, so that's going to be B is 29. The time when Miss Rawolf is at her desk, well, when Miss Rawolf gets to her desk, it would have been somewhere down here on this line, right? Well, that would have been my x-intercept, so C is with number 30. Next up, we have D, when Miss Rawolf is 5 feet, or I'm sorry, Miss Rawolf starts 5 feet from her desk. Well, here's 0 times 0, and here's where I start 5 feet. Well, that was my y-intercept. Then we have number of minutes. Well, that's pretty generic, but number of minutes is the time, and domain covered all of that time. So domain is that number of minutes. F is when Miss Rawolf is 4 feet from her desk after 8 minutes. Well, Miss Rawolf is 4 feet from her desk after 8 minutes during 32, right? I even see those numbers there, so that's a nice big ol' hint. G is the number of feet from her desk. Well, that's pretty generic. That doesn't give me a lot of explanation, but my range covers all of that. So G is going to be with 24. H is when Miss Rawolf is saying the same distance. So the time when Miss Rawolf is saying the same distance, well, that would be my constant, right? That's when I'm flat. That's where I'm staying the same distance from my desk. Next is the time when Miss Rawolf is getting closer to her desk. Well, this one gets confusing for some people. If I'm getting closer, I'm getting less farther away, right? That doesn't make sense. But I'm getting less farther away, which is when I'm decreasing. So that means that I is when I'm decreasing. J says when the minutes when Miss Rawolf is 6 feet from her desk. Well, Y stood for feet, and here's where I see 6 feet. So J represents the times or the minutes when Miss Rawolf is 6 feet from her desk. And then lastly, K is the time when Miss Rawolf is getting farther from her desk. So that's got to be increasing, right? And if that makes sense, right? I'm going up, which means I'm getting further because my distance from my desk is getting farther. It's getting bigger, right? Okay, that's all I have for you today. If you want to try the different rounds and turn them into the Google Classroom by taking a picture, you can. When you go into our Google Classroom for enrichment, just make sure you turn them into the under week 18 where it says Friday 12/17 module 3 review with bingo. Obviously we can't play bingo, but if you want to practice, you're more than welcome. I wish you all so very good luck on your finals week. I'm sorry I can't be there with you, but I know you're going to do just absolutely amazing.